Okay, good morning, Minister. How are you, Minister? Good, Minister. Wonderful. Yes, Minister. Yeah. Right, let's settle down. We're about to start. Minister of Transport, Mr. Fikile Mbalula, Chairperson of the SANRAL Board, Mr. Themba Mhambi, Acting CEO, Likhono Lopitse, SANRAL and DOT colleagues, ladies and gentlemen of the media, a very good morning. This is a SANRAL Board's press briefing. It follows the May press briefing where board outlined the reasons why it did not approve the award of the 5 tenders amounting to some 17.4 billion. Since then, there's been developments about which the board will communicate this morning. We are grateful to be joined by the Minister, and I'm going to invite him to the podium to make his remarks. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you, Program Director, Mr. Vusimona, the Chair of the Board of SANRAL, Mr. Themba Mhambi, and the Acting Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Likhono, and the board members present here today, and one board member on the podium. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, it is indeed a great privilege to be here this morning. It will always be a privilege to be here and to interact with you on very important and pertinent issues. And we take a pride and we give thanks to you for being interested in our stories, the same as you are interested when the controversy arises, but you are also interested in the conclusion and following up on the stories and giving us our right to reply all the time. We do appreciate that, and we don't take it for granted, because that is how the relationship should be. The same determination to go and get the story, it should be the same to give a balanced view, to give all the parties interested. And you are doing your job, and we're not standing on your way in terms of the work that you do. Otherwise, this democracy will collapse. Some of its basic tenets include the freedom of the press to inform and to be informed. And in that way, we know that accountability from those who are in power, who are given the authority and responsibility to govern, must govern well, and they must also be open to scrutiny and be able to open to engagement whenever the need arises. So we are here today, as it has been explained by the program director. On the 23rd May 2022, SANRAL took the nation into confidence on the precautionary measures it took when it declined to award a number of tenders as a result of lapses in the due process. So there were no tenders that were cancelled, they were not rewarded. But in the language of the industry, as it was properly captured by the chair of the board, it is referred to as cancelled tenders. The board of SANRAL is bound by its fiduciary duties, which among others enjoin it to act with fidelity, honesty, integrity, and in the best interest of the company at all times. Turning a blind eye to what would have resulted in irregular expenditure and possible litigation that would have held up some of the projects in courts for years would have amounted to dereliction of duty on the part of the board. In appreciating the strategic nature of the affected projects and their importance in giving momentum to economic reconstruction and recovery, I have impressed on the board the need to move with speed in addressing the anomalies and award these tenders in a manner that is transparent and fair. I am pleased that the board has moved with necessary speed to address the due process lapses with a clear plan on how to finalize the award of these tenders within the shortest possible time. We have traversed a hard road in the aftermath of the state capture and the irregular award of tenders in some of our entities and acts of downright malfeasance in others, which include PRASA and AXA. The efforts to restore the integrity of our institutions and rebuild the hollowed-out capacity has been painstaking at best. The hard lesson we have learned from this ordeal is to remain vigilant and stop creeping lawlessness, greed, and corruption dead on its tracks. Our electoral mandate is premised on a commitment that we will forge ahead on our march to a better South Africa through service delivery that is responsive to the needs and aspirations of our people. We are under no illusion that the road ahead requires us to be resolute and give practical expression to accelerated service delivery. Our efforts to eliminate fruitless and wasteful expenditure and reduce irregular expenditure require of us and all our entities to put in place early warning systems to detect and regularize actions that may otherwise result in irregular expenditure or costly litigation. So, Mr. Mahambi, it is against that background as the chair that I'm very elated, because whether small or big your intervention, if it had an impact in terms of irregular expenditure, the same voices, the cacophony of voices we are hearing which attack you and your board and your integrity will be the first to disown you. Will be the first to disown you as people who don't respect proper governance, because they attack you because it fits their interest in terms of what they want to achieve. Nobody says nobody must not get work. Everybody will get work. The pie is too big. Construction industry is big. And everybody must get what it is due to them. But proper processes must be followed. The board, through its oversight mechanism, identified the flouting of due process and moved with speed to act in order to preserve the integrity of the tenders. Good governance is a cornerstone of efficient service delivery, and for that reason we will always keep governance on our radar and expect quarterly reports to include governance by our entities. In appreciating the importance of the projects affected by the non-award of the tenders, SANRAL has taken steps to ensure that we move with speed in addressing the lapses and reach the point of award speedily. In conclusion, the King Code 5 on corporate governance is applicable to SANRAL like all other state-owned public entities listed in Schedule 2 and 3 of the PFMA. In internalizing the principles outlined in the SOE sector supplement of the Code, the board, as an accounting authority, must serve as a focal point and custodian of corporate governance at SANRAL. The chairperson of the SANRAL board, Mr. Themba Mhambi, will present a detailed briefing on the steps SANRAL has taken to ensure that we reach the point of award of the tenders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, for laying the scene. Indeed, in your presence and by your presence, we feel reassured and affirmed. We do have in our midst Ms. Fikile Mbalula, who is a member of the board. If my colleague Carol Payton was here, I would say a lot more about Ms. Mbalula, that she has more than 20 years in both the public and the private sector. But that's a debate for another day. I will now call upon the chair to make his input.
Thank you very much, Vusi. If I may please recognize the presence of the Honorable Minister and express our gratitude to you, sir, for once more joining us as we discharge our accounting and reporting responsibilities to the people of South Africa. I must recognize as well a number of very important people here, among them board members of SANRAL, our acting CEO, colleagues from the ministry and from the Department of Transport, other colleagues from SANRAL, indeed colleagues from this very place that's hosting us, for which we're grateful, by the way, and our media colleagues. So greetings to all of you. This morning I was with our media people from SANRAL and some of our other officials. And I was saying to them, you know, I'm struggling to put together the statement we must give to the people of South Africa today. Because last time we were here, we had to defend ourselves against attacks. And I've been in that mode since that time. And indeed, now I'm called upon to be a little bit more mature and not fight. It's very unfamiliar territory if you know what we have been going through over the past few weeks. But we will try our best. On May the 23rd, we as the board of SANRAL held a media briefing in this very facility to provide information and facts pertaining to our resolution then not to approve the intended awarding of 5 tenders collectively amounting to around 17 billion rand. We stood here and we outlined the reasons behind our decision. Our intention was to demonstrate to the South African people the rationality of that decision. And indeed, as the minister had asked us to do, to take the nation into our confidence. If I may just give a recap. In summary, the reasons behind our decision to cancel those tenders and begin the process afresh were the following: that where there is a lapse of corporate governance, we have an obligation to ensure that it is restored. And indeed, there had been lapses in corporate governance. Where internal controls have not been complied with, as an accounting authority, our duty is to make sure that those internal controls are brought to bear upon the work of SANRAL, and they had to be restored. We are also obliged by the Constitution to run procurement in a manner consistent with the laws of the country, with the regulations that emanate from those laws, and indeed with our own policies. And we saw in that process some lapses with regards to that space, and indeed, as the board, we had a responsibility to ensure that the laws of the country, the regulations, and our own policies had to be observed, and we have started that process. And finally, we have in South Africa, as we all know, government policy that talks to giving business to the business community, and of all sizes. But the policy also says we must not forget those who have not previously had opportunities, and those who are running smaller businesses and therefore who require ongoing support in order for them to grow so that they can participate in the mainstream of our economy. And therefore, we have an obligation to subcontract to smaller businesses, SMMEs. We have an obligation to advance black economic empowerment, and indeed, we have an obligation to push for transformation in the industry so that all in the industry, right from the smallest to the biggest, may feel included and that they are part of the economic opportunities in construction. Of course, some of those entities which had submitted tenders were infuriated by our decision. And you can't blame them, because obviously they had been ready. You know, they had expectations of getting some of these. So when this did not happen, the disappointment turned into anger. But their response left a lot to be desired, as they then went on a national media and political offensive and campaign to portray us as nincompoops, to be pilloried, to be bent at stakes. None of them, however, has thus far proven us wrong in terms of the reasons behind our actions. The reason why they've not been able to prove us wrong is that our reasons were and continue to be right, and in the best interests of SANRAL as our fiduciary responsibility enjoins us in terms of good governance and in the best interests of the construction industry itself. As you know, this industry is sometimes called the third most corrupt industry. in the world. And you don't want to reinforce that kind of perception. And indeed, in the best interest of the people of South Africa. But we did not differ in virtually everything. One area in which our detractors and us agreed was that the non-awarding of those tenders was a serious setback in terms of time. It meant a delay in the implementation of the projects that had to flow from those tenders. Now, we were all mindful of that. And government at different levels indeed inquired as to whether we would address that particular concern in the context of the very crucial need for economic recovery in our country. And indeed, we were mindful of that and concerned about the country's economic recovery, the construction industry's need for business, the need for SMME development, and job creation. We as SANRAL then resolved to accelerate the required re-advertisement and awarding of the tenders. We therefore set ourselves a 4-month deadline, during which we told the country the tenders would be re-advertised, they would be evaluated, they would be adjudicated, and they would be awarded. And indeed, there was some skepticism, but as you shall see, based on our program and where we are in relation to it, you will see that it is doable. Because we were not reinventing the wheel in any way. All the work had already been done. That is why some were of the view that, no, we are ready to award the tenders. And therefore, we are not starting from scratch. That is why the 4-month period is realistic. Now, pursuant to that, and in fulfillment of that commitment that we would do this in 4 months, we are here today to announce the material and substantive beginning of that recovery process. Before, however, we catalog specific details, let us remind you that to guarantee the integrity of the procurement process moving forward, we decided and announced that we would appoint an independent public entity with expertise and a proven track record in handling the procurement and the management of projects of the magnitude of those 5 tenders. We undertook, as the minister indicated, to move with speed and conclude the appointment of that entity by the end of June. And as you know, June ends today. And I dare say the minister has been on our case with regards to this. In line with that objective and promise, the SANRAL board is today pleased to announce that it has concluded an engagement process with the Development Bank of Southern Africa, DBSA, which institution has agreed to act as our infrastructure, procurement, and delivery management support on the 5 strategic projects whose tenders were cancelled. Why the DBSA? It must be noted that it was not in any way involved in the design, the cost estimation, and tender documentation stages of the cancelled projects. Therefore, there is absolutely no conflict of interest on their part, which is what was fundamental in our thinking. This should reassure all interested parties and the public about the integrity and the independence of the new procurement processes for the projects. DBSA's profile and record in regard to matters of this nature speaks for itself. They don't need me to be their cheerleader. So, ladies and gentlemen of the media and everyone interested, we do wish to say to you, we have met the first part of our deadline with respect to our recovery plan in relation to these projects. That is the governance part of all of this, and indeed what must follow is the operational part. And as the board, we have entrusted, obviously, that responsibility to those who get paid at SANRAL to run the operations of the organization, led by our acting CEO, who shall then take us forward here today in relation to what is now going to unfold over the next 3 months, so that we can live up to our promise to the people of South Africa. Thank you very much on my part. I'm going to invite our acting CEO to take it forward from here.
Thank you very much, Chair, for laying the foundation. And I would like to acknowledge the Minister of Transport for always supporting us, for always being with us through this difficult process. And members of board who are here present, all my colleagues from SANRAL who are present, ladies and gentlemen of the media. So as the chair has already indicated that what I'll go into is very operational, I'll take you through the procurement process that our appointed independent public entity, DBSA, will embark on in making sure that we adhere to the 4 months. And I would like to emphasize as well that as officials of SANRAL, I think I've told the chair this, that since the first engagement with DBSA, I felt a sense of relief that we are moving towards the goal that we want to achieve. So I'll go into the details of the scope. So the scope of the services to be provided by DBSA will include the evaluation of compliance, because that's very key, technical and financial aspects of the relevant tenders, as well as providing independent construction management oversight throughout the construction period of the project emanating from these tenders. So they will be involved in making sure that all the issues that were raised in the previous tenders that led to the cancellations, that those are taken care of and that they are not repeated. And the procurement phase of the identified project is characterized inter alia by the following key stages or activities. So there will be an establishment of the required team, the review of the tender documents prior to the invitation of bids. As the chair has already indicated, we're not starting from scratch. The procurement process had advanced to a very advanced stage when the tenders were cancelled, so there will be a review of those tender documents. Submission of the tender documents for relevant approval after they've done the review of those, the invitation of bids, the management and handling of tender briefing sessions, the opening and recording of bids received, the determination of completeness or incompleteness of the bids, the determination of the responsiveness or non-responsive of the bids, the evaluation of the bids, the risk analysis relating to the bids received, development of bids evaluation and adjudication reports, recommendation of bidders for appointment, awarding of the tenders. And all these phases, ladies and gentlemen, will be subjected to probity checks. And the planned timeline, now we're elaborating on the planned timeline for the 4 months and how it will unfold. So the planned timeline for the execution of this phase of the work is as follows. So the chair has already indicated that appointment has already been made and it has announced that it's DBSA. I think it feels so good to say it out in public now, Chair. So the procurement project inception meeting happened in June. The memorandum of agreement development, the finer details of the memorandum of agreement in June as well, as the chair said, deadline is today. I know that it's very advanced and it will be finalized today. In July and in August, this is what's going to happen. This is very critical stage. Project team mobilization and information gathering, review of bid specifications, approval of bid specifications and adverts, advertisement of tenders, receipts of bids, bid evaluation, and bid adjudication. So this will happen between July and August. So all the interested parties, all service providers concerned are therefore advised that they should be on the lookout for these tenders during the month of July, because that's when the adverts will be out. And then in September, there'll be submission of bid evaluation and adjudication report to SANRAL, and then SANRAL board consideration of the recommendation, and then the tender awards. So anticipation is that the award will be made in September. Once the tenders are awarded and SANRAL project managers, because SANRAL project managers will come on board, and consultants, those ones who did the design, begin to supervise contractor performance and project delivery, the DBSA's role now will change to project the oversight on behalf of the board, with regular reporting to the board to ensure that these projects receive ongoing board monitoring and support. Our procurement and implementation plan for this project is therefore well and truly back on track, and we wish to reassure the nation that it shall be executed meticulously and with the independence and integrity required. We call upon the industry to join us in running an impeccable process whose results shall be in the best interest of SANRAL, the industry itself, and the country as we jointly deliver on the road infrastructure, development mandate, and commitment to the nation. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'll hand over to Mr. Mono.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Acting CEO. Ladies and gentlemen, we shall now get into the question and answer session. I'm going to ask that we do what is the norm. You introduce yourself and the media entity that you represent. There are colleagues who are joining us online. I do have colleagues who are watching there, and they will be forwarding the questions to me. Let us start with questions in this room. We're opening it up for questions. I note you, Roy. There's a gentleman there. I hate saying gentleman. There's a lady here. If I knew your name, I'd call you by name. But let's start with Roy, and then the gentleman, and then the lady here.
Hello, Roy Cocaine from MoneyWeb. I have a few questions. Have any legal claims been submitted related to the cancellation of the projects? That's number one. And do you anticipate that the cancellation and the re-advertisement and the whole process to re-award these contracts is going to lead to a price increase for these projects? I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Roy. Let's move to the gentleman behind the camera.
Buleli Treaty Jones from ENCA. Maybe my first question is, we just want to find out as to who were these parties responsible for the lapses. Do we perhaps, maybe, are you at liberty to disclose their names? And maybe just on a separate matter to ask the Minister of Transport as to how far are you with the e-toll matter? I mean, there's been silence about this issue, so just wanted to get an update on that as well. Sure.
Thank you. Coming from.
This is for the chairperson of the board. My name is Tando Maeko from Business Day. So the withdrawal of the tenders caused a delay in the implementation of SANRAL's critical road infrastructure projects, including the flagship presidential infrastructure projects that are aimed at kickstarting the economy. Can you just give an indication about how long the delay is? So when will the projects go online? And then there's an issue of the delay in the infrastructure projects on the N3 that is causing a backlog of goods to be moved. When does SANRAL intend to deal with that? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister, would you want to dispense with? Let's start with the business of the day, and then Minister is the easiest on the top. All right, Chairperson, over to you.
Thank you, Vusi, and thanks to the colleagues for the questions, please. Roy, with regards to legal claims, we haven't received any. I don't know if I should also indicate that one particular entity, one of the bidders, which had been reported to have said it was going to take us to court, wrote to us and clarified the matter and said that it had no intention of taking us to court. So I think on the legal front, that's really where we are. Do we anticipate a price increase? I think in matters of this nature, you should anticipate either an increase or a decrease. This being a competitive thing, so you don't know if you're not going to find the second time around people who may have worked out ways to deliver these services more cost effectively and in a cheaper manner. And therefore, our response would be either of those is possible. The beautiful thing is that 4 months is not that long. If you also consider the fact that even if we had awarded them at that time, ordinarily you could easily have found that there could have been a delay in terms of the starting time for some of the bidders. So we're not sure about that. Who are the parties to the lapses? You know, when you deal with procurement, you've got a whole chain that begins right from the department handling supply chain management in the organization. It includes various committees. There are some support functions along the line. And indeed, it culminates right at the top echelons of the procurement process management in the organization. I am mentioning those in order to highlight the complexity of determining exactly where transgressions may have been committed. So we are in the process of analyzing these matters and determining who the parties are. So I cannot give specific names here, safe to say that we are investigating the matter. Yes, sir. Yes, the matter is receiving our attention, and we are on record as having said that there will be relevant consequence management. And please don't take that as any threat to anybody, because consequence management could mean anything from subjecting people to training to actually giving people a hot clap, figuratively so. Mamutando Maeko, the delay in implementation, your question is how long? Well, we've set ourselves 4 months to recover. So, if we meet our 4-month deadline, indeed the delay shall have been a 4 months delay. So our anticipation is that we shall begin in October with having our contractors on site starting to do their thing. The work on the N3 and how long it will take is something I honestly cannot say here. Safe to say, as the board of SANRAL and the management, we have called upon the parties managing that whole project, and we have expressed our concern to them about the number of accidents happening there, and they have indeed shown us all the necessary steps they have taken to limit the possibility of accidents on that stretch of the road. I think the area in particular is called something like Towns Hill or something like that. Now, what we have said as the board is, let us as SANRAL fund the engagement of more traffic management personnel to work there, so that you have a 24-hour management of that stretch of the road and certain other parts of the N3 to try and minimize the incidence of accidents in that area. Because as the minister always says, one life lost is one life too many. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My answer, which I'm happy to repeat, is that on e-tolls, between myself and the Minister of Finance, directed by the President of the Republic, is that this matter must come to Cabinet before then, and by MTPBS, medium term budget statement by the Minister, this matter will feature there as a matter resolved by Cabinet. It will happen by Minister delivering the statement or even before that. We are working on the matter. I've made a lot of promises and concessions, almost certain. I use the word concession. Almost certain that a decision will be delivered. That is now last year, when Tito Mboweni was still Minister of Finance, and there's now Minister Kotongwana. So this one is for sure certain. We have agreed even last week. So our teams are working on the issues that need to be worked on before we make a final decision. There was a decision that was taken by Cabinet on the e-tolls, which was taking us the direction of the fuel levy. The fuel levy story has become very messy over time, and it's no longer an option we can consider, among others. Fuel price has gone up. The conflict in Russia and Ukraine have just exacerbated our situation. There is no government which will rise or raise fuel prices to its citizens deliberately. It is the circumstances around us that have brought us to where we are. And it's not for me to explain that. It's the Minister of Energy and the Minister of Finance to explain why fuel prices are going up in the Republic. So that when people complain about fuel price and all of that, they are fully aware of why we're going in this direction. So fuel price, among others, affected our decision on the fuel levy that to do away with the GFIP as it is, we will then have to go through the route, we'll go via fuel price in South Africa. So we are not taking that route. So we are looking at various options in terms of e-tolls, which we will finalize before the MTPBS medium-term budget statement of government. So that's where we are with the e-tolls. And we'll give you answer. That will be around October. Yes. So around October, the e-tolls will be finalized and we'll give you the answers. That's where we are. Thank you.
Thank you for the responses. I've got a couple of questions from Carol Payton. First one, does the role that the DBSA will play relate only to advising the board on the tenders for these 5 projects? Or does it then supervise the construction? If not, who will supervise the construction? Are you going to get the services of a consulting engineer? The next question from Carol is directed to the Minister. When do you intend to renew the board of SANRAL? Until when has the term of the current board been extended? Maybe we should start with the chair and then the Minister will follow.
Thank you, Carol, for your question. The role of the DBSA is a bipartite one, with the first part centering on managing the procurement process for us, so that we can assure everyone involved that it was done independently and without any influence from inside SANRAL, given the fact that all these lapses occurred within SANRAL. That is the first part. The second part is that DBSA will not supervise the construction. The construction will be supervised by our own project managers within SANRAL and the consultants we had already appointed to help us with that. That is the operational side of SANRAL doing what it has to do in terms of its mandate. Now, as the board, our mandate is oversight. And in the light of some developments in relation to quite a few of the projects within SANRAL, we have identified as this board a need for us to have ongoing oversight over projects. And that oversight, we are of the view, needs to be independent. We must not rely on our own people to tell us what is happening, because then we can be accused of not having exercised the requisite independence. And so part 2 of the responsibility we have asked DBSA to handle for us is to assist us as the board now with that oversight in terms of these projects. Thank you very much.
Carol, we have already advertised for the appointment of the new board. The current board will cease to be in office once the new board process has been finalized, and process that include finalizing the shortlisting and taking the matter to cabinet for approval, and then there will be a new board. So that is where the process is at. So at any time in between all of this, there will be a new board announcement and taking over from the current board. So the status of the board is not an issue at hand, as it has got full powers and authority to act on all the matters that is before the board itself. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you, Minister. I don't see any questions coming online. Are there still any questions in this room? Any further questions? There aren't any further questions. I think on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we can safely conclude the business of the day. Thank you very much, Minister, for coming. Thank you, Board Chair. Thank you, members of the board and Acting CEO. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Adjourned.